We're here, thrust into existence, apparently alive. But as consciousness is, as of yet, still a mystery, where here actually is likewise remains enigmatic. Nonetheless, our consciousness is experiencing something here. But what exactly? Step now thus into the DiMENSiONSCAPE, MG.
This next story is mine, just like the others, but is shared with my younger brother, Carlos, mentioned in the last episode segment entitled Maternal Messages. This one happened when we were still living at my mother's house in the early to mid-90s. Again, I'm not proud of it, but part of the truth I'm led to share about yet another supernatural event from our lives also features my use of intoxicants. This tale highlights a fairly early experience with undefined premonition like the kind I experienced on 9/11 and in Frozen Foresights, the one I just told about the train wreck. Like that one, this one was a life or death matter. Unlike that one, this time I could do something about it, and did. Or rather, Jesus did. This next segment of the night is called Party Portal. In my mother's basement, while she and my stepfather, Tyrell, Carlos's father, were out of town, my younger brother and I had a few friends over. It wasn't a party, just the fellas getting buzzed from some smoke and drink. While we did, we listened to music, played chess, laughed, and talked about nothing. At some point, the alcohol ran out, and before long, there was talk of heading to the store and getting more. It became a plan. It was summer, about quitting time in the late afternoon, when the boys decided to make the run. They asked me if I wanted to join them, but I declined, as I could use the time to try to write a song, ever the artist from our bunch. So they left without me as I sat at my keyboard and tried to feel creative. They weren't gone too long before it hit, that familiar, cold darkness. I knew what it was. I knew it was them, him. My brother was in danger. Life or death danger. I kind of both dread it and feel blessed God is talking to me at the same time every time it happens. A rather strange blend, but at least this time I was close enough to it to do something. I could feel it as clearly as I felt the keys of my instrument neath my fingers. Knowing it for what it was, I wasted no time hitting my knees. Right then, right there. I had to get in touch with the only one that could help my brother at this point. Jesus. Tyrell didn't need the pressure of losing another son, ever. It would kill him. And if there was anything I could do to spare him and all of us that kind of pain, I was going to do it. So I came before the Lord, high and all, but I was so cross-faded, drunk, stoned, not optimum for approaching the King of Kings' throne. Sin is sin, and I'm not minimizing mine. But sin or no, I had to go into spiritual warfare for my brother. And this time, God was good enough to answer spectacularly. Now, let me say here clearly, I didn't know what form the danger would take. In fact, that didn't even matter. All that mattered was my response to it. God was being good enough to let me know something was going down. And as you're probably getting tired of hearing me say, I knew it for what it was and took it serious. The only question was, what was I going to do? Feeling a panic attack, I fell to my knees and began honestly. God, Lord, I know I'm drunk. I know I'm high, but that's my brother out there, and only you can save his life. And I'm asking you to because you're the only hope I have of seeing him alive again. I prayed in my mother's air-conditioned basement, both in English and in the tongues of angels. I prayed hard. I prayed for a good long while, too. Desperately. I begged. I cried. I repented and did not stop. I prayed so hard I broke into a sweat, even though that basement could not have been warmer than 69 degrees. and my Lord heard from heaven and sent me a message that my prayer would be answered. How can I explain that part? I guess I really can't. All I can say to those who have never experienced a break in the spirit is that I felt something dark suddenly lighten, something tight and choking break away and fall from my spirit. And in that moment, I knew everything was going to be all right. Feeling God release the virtue, I knew my work was done. I got off my knees, sat back down in my keyboard and wrote a few songs and enjoyed the process. Now, the other side of the story. My brother and his 3 friends were supposed to be going to get some more to drink and then coming back so we could pick up where we left off. In spite of all the sweating, crying, and praying, they didn't come back. Time slowed to a crawl as the devil tried to tempt me into doubting God, but I never did. I knew his voice then as I do now, and I knew when I felt that spiritual break. I knew and held to my faith in God that he'd save my brother. Tyrell's only living son would not die this day, and I happily continued making beats. This stretched on for hours until after midnight. Finally, as I'm in the bathroom, Carlos bursts in and shouts excitedly, "You are never gonna believe what happened." I shoot him a bored look and say, "What took so long?" And this is what he says. We were in the car heading down Broadway at rush hour. Traffic was heavy and moving fast. I knew the liquor store they were going to. Our cousins owned it. And if they were going to that one, that meant they were coming up on Dead Man's Corner. A pause. Running north and south, spanning the entire breadth of the city, Broadway is the largest artery in our hometown. Dead Man's Corner is a notorious intersection my mother, a former nurse, told me about along this street, famous for being the site of an inordinate amount of fatal crashes. Something about that spot makes it more than a mere intersection of 2 major streets that transforms it into a truly horrific gateway to the afterlife. Continuing, he said, they were coming through that corner when suddenly an ambulance bursts into the crowded intersection, lights ablaze and sirens screaming. Traffic reacts surprised by its sudden appearance, scrambling erratically, and not everyone is able to control their vehicles. Multiple crashes ensue, and Carlos's vehicle is dead center of it all. Tires screeched in vain effort to stop, glass shattered as bodies sailed through, and screams of panic and death filled the late afternoon air. My brother said it was chaos all around, and he knew, without a doubt, people all around him were dying. He also knew as he was smack in the middle of it all, there was no escaping for him and his passengers. This afternoon, a simple trip to the liquor store was going to ensure my little brother and his passengers were all going to have their part in the corner of death. Just when he saw a collision imminently approaching, he says, something happened. He can't explain it, but something moved the car. Not like sliding it or picking it up kind of moving it, more like a portal pushing it through, a wormhole type of moving it. I know that sounds insane and maybe is as far as descriptions go, but my God is big and can do whatever he wants. And if he wants to warp a car through a wormhole, he does. And that's exactly what Carlos said happened, because all he or his passengers could remember was 1 second they were surrounded by a flurry of bending steel, breaking glass, screams, and death, and the next, they were parked in the alley behind the liquor store they were headed to, safely parked, and even with the engine shut off. It was instantaneous, he said, and he didn't drive there, he said. He had no idea how he had gotten there. He blinked, he said, and they were just there. He said when he realized they were no longer on Broadway or in danger but parked, he said everyone in the car silently and blankly looked around at each other. Finally, someone asked, "What just happened? How did we get here?" And Carlos said all he could say was he didn't know. After he'd finished, all I said was, "Oh."